I will make a difference. Oh, wait for me. Let's do it together. Ready? I will make a difference. Let's do it again. I will make a difference. Now, I didn't say whether it's good or bad, but what you said is true. You will make a difference. Everybody is going to make a difference. Many times we don't know. It's like the story of a young minister who got on a bus, and this is back in the days before they had tokens, and he gave the driver $1, who gave him his change. Any of you remember the days when they had those little clickers on their side with the change in them? And he gave him his change, and the preacher went to the back of the bus, and he started looking at his change, and he counted out, and he saw that he had a dime too much. And he thought to himself, oh, the bus is full, the driver's busy, and they charge too much anyway, and it's just a dime, and who will miss it? And the Holy Spirit said, it's not your dime, he gave you a dime too much. And so when it came time, as he was nearing his stop, he went back up to the front of the bus, and as the driver was going along, he says, when you gave me my change, you gave me a dime too much. And he gave it back to the driver who took it. He said, I'm so thankful that you did that. The driver said, I was in your church last Sunday when you were preaching on the commandment, thou shalt not steal. He said, I saw you standing in line as I approached the bus stop, and I thought, I'm going to find out if this preacher's for real. My wife's been telling me to come to church. I only went that one day. So I gave you too much change, and I was watching you in my mirror study your change. And I told the Lord, if he brings it back up, I'll keep coming to church. If he doesn't, they're all hypocrites. And what if that preacher had not brought his change back up? He never would have known that he, by his decision to keep a dime, would be making a difference on somebody choosing to go to church the rest of their life. You will make a difference. In everything you do, in the way you conduct yourself, we are all making a difference. There is nobody that is neutral. Now I'd like for you to know that your difference is telling for good or for evil. You will make a difference. You have an incredible influence. Jesus said, Matthew 12, verse 30, he who is not with me is against me. He never said there's a Switzerland. You cannot be neutral. He that is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. You need to ask yourself, am I gathering to Christ by my influence, or am I scattering from Christ? Everybody is doing something one way or the other. Matthew 6:24, no man can serve two masters, and there's not a third master. It's one of two that are at war in this world. There's a poem I found I thought was worth sharing. Now, I don't often read poems, because not only is a good poem good, but it must be read well. And I struggle reading these things out loud, so I'll try. But it sounded good when I read it. My life shall touch a dozen lives before this day is done. Leave countless marks of good or ill ere sets the evening sun. This wish I always wish, the prayer I always pray, Lord, may my life help other lives it touches by the way. All day long. Was that a good poem? All day long, we are touching other lives. We are having an influence. We are making a difference. In everything from whether or not you decided to brush your teeth and gargle, to whether or not you decided to smile at somebody who is discouraged. Only in eternity will we begin to grasp the tip of the iceberg of how much our influence is making a difference in the lives of others. When you are running towards God and doing his will, people will be gathered into the kingdom, as in the story of Jonah. When you are running from God and his will for your life, you are dragging down others with you, as with Jonah. No man is an island, someone once said. First of all, of course, we all know you will have an influence on your children or grandchildren because they are so easily impressed. Their eyes, their ears, their minds are like a clean slate. It's like a vacuum, gathering and sucking up all the information and input that they can retrieve. Karl Marx, when he was a boy, was a Jew. His father was a devoted Jew. In Germany, they moved to a town where the Lutherans really held sway. And one day, after years of being Orthodox Jews, the father announced, "We're now going to become Christians." Karl was absolutely stunned. His respect for his father was devastated. He said, why are we doing this? He said, well, they have the influence in town and we have to do business here, and so in order to be able to operate among them, we're going to be Lutherans now. Karl Marx, of course, chucked all religion because of that decision his father made. He said it was the opiate of the people. And he, of course, launched communism. And look at the influence on the world. And a lot of it can be traced back to the decision that his father made to compromise his faith for convenience. Communism spreads around the world. Never underestimate the influence that we're having on children. You've heard me say many times, but it's still true, what Albert Schweitzer said, there's 3 ways to teach children. Example, example, and the third is example. By being a good example, through our influence, they begin to follow us. In the Harz Mountains of Germany, you've heard of Harz pet food. They have estuaries where they raise canaries that are sold around the world. And some places have 200,000 canaries. Can you imagine what that sounds like? And some of those canaries are really good singers. But the experts there that manage the place will tell you we never sell the good singers. They said the good singers are kept among the new birds and they teach the young ones to sing. Canaries learn to sing by listening to other canaries. I didn't know that until I read this. And the ones that sing the greatest variety of notes are the ones that are trained by the most varied singers. And in contrast, there was a man who had a canary, and he enjoyed its melody and all the notes and the variety and the way that it sang, but he felt sorry for it because it was in a cage in his house. And so during the day, when he would go to work, he would set it when the weather was fair by the window. And the canary would sing its little heart out, and the sparrows were attracted. And the sparrows would come over, and you know, a little brown sparrow would go chirp, chirp, chirp. It's got one song it plays all the time. You know some people like that, right? And just chirping, and pretty soon the man came home and he noticed that his canary's repertoire was shrinking. Until pretty soon all the canary did was chirp, chirp, chirp because of the influence of the sparrows. Now, if that's true of birds, you might be surprised to learn that it's also true of people, especially children. We need to remember when the children are around us to be a good example. They're listening. I've caught myself, sometimes adults get together and we squawk about things we don't like about other people. And sometimes, I know it's almost impossible to believe, but Christians talk about other Christians, and worse still is they talk about the pastor. And what do you think children are thinking when they're listening to their parents say negative things about other Christians? What impression does that make on their minds? Or if at home the parents are saying negative or disparaging things about the pastor in the presence of their children, what happens to the respect level in the mind of the children for church, the preacher, and Christian things? It's lowered. We've got to be very careful what we say. Those little birds are listening. And they end up talking like us, don't they? Who was it that said, I remember my mother could always tell who I had been playing with during the day by the way I acted when I came home. Any of you have children like that? It seems like they imperceptibly pick up the mannerisms of the children that they're playing with. And it's true with my children. If they spend half a day with one of their friends, if it's one of the friends I know, and they come home, I can observe their behavior even when their friends are gone, and it leaves an aura in their attitudes and their words and their body language and little nuances of how they act and what they say. I could always tell who my mother was talking to on the phone, partly because she was an actress, I think, and she did it a little bit on purpose. But she would begin to talk like and sound like whoever she was talking to. My mother would, my mom lived in London for a little while. She would talk to her friends while living in New York. She'd talk to her friends in London, and she'd start talking British accent just like that. She'd turn it on. She'd talk to some of her hippie friends. All of a sudden, she had all the hippie lingo and dialect. And then she'd talk to her musician friends, and bingo, she was a musician. And I'd say, you're talking to so-and-so, you're talking to so-and-so, and she'd get irritated because we could tell so quickly because she would